beginning of this course, in the first part of objects in JavaScript, we will go through exercises that will help you better understand the objects and how you can use them and manipulate them. We will take exercises from the easiest one to the little bit more difficult ones, and at any stage, if you have any questions or you feel I went too fast or something didn't add up, please let me know in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to support and help, and if there is any gap or you feel something is missing, I will just try to catch up and create another video and help you better understand it. So stay tuned and let's jump into our first exercise. So the first one is about accessing your object properties, so how you can access the keys or the values. Okay, so the question is asking us to write a function, okay, and that function will take an object and a key as input. So basically you need a function that takes two arguments, okay, and what we'll do, it will give us back or returns the value of this key. Okay, so what that mean? Let me create our first object, const my car object, and we use object literal to define it. So equal, open the curly brackets, and let's again maker is Toyota, and model, my favorite one, Land Cruiser. Okay, Sahara. Okay, now what the question is asking us is saying right from a function that you can pass any object, and we'll take example of ours, and you'll pass as well the property or the key name. Okay, and that function will give me the value of that key. Okay, now let's create our function. There are two methods to create function, standard ones. There is the normal standard function declaration, and we have also the arrow function, and I'll try to use both of them to demonstrate for you. Otherwise the code inside the functions are the same, it's just how we declare the functions. Now the standard one, you use function keyword, then the function name, so you can name it anything you like. I'll name it get the key value, which makes sense. Just make sure again when you name anything you like, it just should be making sense. Okay, now we declare two arguments. I'm expecting this function to have an object as argument and the key. Okay, I'll call it key name, for example. Again, these two, call them anything you want as well. Okay, just make sure it does make sense. So it's accepting an object as says here and a key as input, which means as argument. Now open the curly brackets, and the function what it wants us is how to return or to return the value. If you remember in the previous or the first part of this course, we said there are two ways to access the value of your keys in the object. Okay, the first one, I'll remind you, cancel log, for example, my car object. Okay, and to access the value, I said dot, and then I pick up the key name, any name I want. I want, for example, the model, right? I said dot model. Okay, this is the first method we learned. The second one we learned was this one again, so I printed for you to prove that it's working. The second method was your object name, my car object, and you open the brackets, okay, and then quote, either single or double quote, it doesn't make difference, and inside you put your key name. Okay, I'll put again model. Okay, let's save this and open our browser, and you can see here both of them are working and they're printing for me the value. Now why I remind you of this, the standard way you use every way is this, but when you're accessing the key names dynamically like we are doing in this function, right, this is a bit dynamic. Okay, we can't do the first part, and I'll explain you why. If I do return object and I do dot key name, okay, what we'll do, it will try to find this key name inside the object as a property or as a key. What that means, it will try to do this, it will try to find for me something this, okay, which it doesn't exist and is not what I want. Okay, so if you do this, it will always give you null or undefined because it doesn't exist. And surprisingly, for some mystery scenario, it does exist, and it will give you something that you don't want, and it will always give you that value. Okay, so we can do this in dynamic scenarios. The way you do is the second part. Okay, so you put your object, bracket, and then the key name in there. Okay, now let's test that this is working. Let's remove these cancel logs, we don't need them anymore, and we do cancel log, and our function name accept 2 arguments. I have now my car object, and I want to access the model. Let's save it, open our browser, and there we go, it is working, and I can approve it for you. There we go, it's coming from the function. Okay, now let's create another object just to demonstrate what we are doing. Let's remove this. Now let's say, for example, const fruit, my fruit object, for example. Okay, and let's say the name of the fruit is banana, and let's say color of the fruit is yellow. Okay, now I want to get the name of the fruit I have. Okay, so the way I will do again, cancel log, and that just to print it in my console in the browser so I can see it. So the way I will do, I'll call my function, I'll pass my object name, which is fruit object, and then I said I want the name, the value of the name. Okay, so I'm passing the name as my second argument. Save, open the browser, go back to my console, and that's a banana in there. Okay, so this is working. Now last thing, as I said before, there are 2 ways to declare your functions. Let me show you the other way. The other way, you don't use function. Okay, you use something called arrow function. So you do const, and let's say get key by, no, get value, I'm just trying to use different name, get value by key. Okay, and it will be again equal sign here, and then you pass your arguments as you did here, and let me name them differently so it's not confusing. My object, and let's here say just it's key, and it will be here an arrow and then curly brackets. That's why we call it arrow function. And again, to return for me, same thing, just make sure the things you're using here that the one define your arguments. So here it should be this, and key should be in key name. Okay, and if I do this, copy it, paste it, but use my new function name, it should also give me the same things. Go back to my browser, and you see here both of them are the same. Nice. The second exercise is asking us to write a function, and this time we'll take 3 arguments or inputs. Its first one is an object, second one is a key, and then the value of that key. And what we'll do, it will add this new key value to our existing object and return us that object. Okay, and how we can do that, if you remember before, the way we did it, we created, for example, my object called my car object again, and that one, let's say have maker, Toyota. I'm using again object letter O to define my object, model, Land Cruiser Sahara. Okay, now what do you want? For example, later I want to add another property to my object which is not defined here. Okay, and if you remember before, we did like this, we just came later and we did my car object, and for example later I want to add year, I just add the dot here, and let's say equal 20, it will be number 2023. Okay, and if I cancel log my car object now to my console, it should have 3 properties, not only 1. And you see here, there it is. So what it wants us to do, create a function that, for example, you'll pass 3 arguments. You'll pass your object to it, you'll pass a new key and a new value, and it will give us back this new object. Okay, now let's define our function. We use standard way of declaration. Let's call it add property to object, for example. So we need something to make some sense, and here it will have your object, okay, and it will have the key name, and let's just have also the key value. Okay, again, this call them anything you want, okay, as long you make sense and you use them properly inside your function. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll do object, but again, like the previous exercise, we can't do dot key name, okay, because that will add for us actually a key name there. And let's do it so I prove you that it's equal to key value. Okay, if I do this and return, and let's call this function and print it to our console. So my car object, let's say I'm doing year, and let's say I'm saying key value will be 2023. Okay, if I do this and go back to my browser, it's saying year is not defined. Okay, and where it is, year is not defined here. Okay, because I should be passing that one as a string. Okay, I'll just remove these extra ones. There we go. Now save it, go back to my browser, and that's 2023. Value, I want to return the whole object itself. So I'll come back here and say return my object, click save, and let's remove this from here, and let's open our browser. We go back here, and you can see what it did. It add a key name, and that gives us a 2023. Okay, now let's fix this. So we don't do dot, we do brackets, and now it should work. If I go back to my browser, you can see here maker, model, and year. I can even add as many properties as I want. Okay, I can, for example, do this. I want to add country, for example. Okay, and it will be a string Australia. Save, go back to my browser, and it will add up on top of the first one. Okay, so what we did the first call, we take our object, we add year to it, and then we take that object which was modified already and we add country to it. Okay, good. Now let's jump to our next one, exercise number 3. Exercise number 3 is asking us to check if a key exists, okay, in our object. So for example, here we want to see if model, key, or property exists in object, or for example something else like year, which doesn't exist in this scenario. So what we want to write a function that can do that job for us, and that function will take the object, of course, and of course the key that will check for us, and will return us true if the key exists. Otherwise, if it doesn't, it will give us false. So it'll give us a boolean return: true if it does exist, false if it doesn't. Now let's declare our function, and there are many ways. I'll cover 2 ways, and let's you try a few others by your own that we did in the previous or the main course of this video, and let me know in the comment section if you're stuck somewhere or if you have any questions. Now we declare our function, and let's call it does have key. Okay, and it will accept 2 arguments, the object and the key name that will check for us. So this one will return for us key, so you can use something called int and object. Okay, so it will check if that key name exists in my object here. Okay, now let's try this. Console log and does have key and my object, my car object, and the second argument we said will be the key name. Let's say the first one year, and this one should return a false because it doesn't exist. And second one, let's say the model, and that should give us a true response. Let's try this. Open our browser and you can see first one is false because the year doesn't exist, okay, in our object. You can see here it's not there, so that's correct. And the second one is true, and that's because checking the model if it does exist in my object, and it does, so that is true. Okay, the other way you can do is, let's declare another function again, and let's have a different name, has key. Okay, and this also will accept as well two arguments, and let's give them different names so it's not confusing for you. My object and the key, and it will return for us, if you remember previous slide, we use my object dot has on property, and hopefully I got the spelling right, and we put the key there. And let's try it. Let's do same thing, copy this one and paste it down there, but use this function name, the new one. Okay, save, open our browser, and I got the spelling right, so this one and this one is the same, and again this one is the same, which means it is working. For this exercise is asking us to have a function that will take only one argument as an input, which is your object, and will give us the number of properties or keys in your object. So we want to know how many properties you have. Okay, like in our example here we have only 2. Okay, now let's write our function and let's call it keys count. Okay, and it will accept only one argument, which is your object, and it will return us the length of your keys. And if you remember in the previous slide, again we study how to access the keys. Okay, so in JavaScript you have a built-in object called object with capital O, and it gives you access to something called keys. Okay, and these keys accept one argument, which is your object. And this one, what it does, it return you an array of the keys names, or an array of the properties names, which means in JavaScript that array, if you do dot length, it will give you the total of how many they are there. Okay, so this one will do the work for us. Let's try it out and print it in our console to see it. Console.log keys property count, and I'm saying my car object. Save, go back to my browser, and I can see 2 there. If I go here and I add another property, then I should see 3, right? So year, for example 2020, save, go back to my browser, and that's 3, and that is working. The next exercise, it may look a bit scary, but also it's a very easy one. So basically what I want you to do is that get a function written that will take 2 objects as an input. So you have 2 arguments and both of them are objects, and it will return for us a new object that is a result of merging the properties of the both. So basically you want a new object which have all these properties in it. Okay, that's why it's saying merging the properties. And there is a catch. If there are conflicting keys, like in our example we have here year and we have also here year, okay, the value from the second object, which passed as a second argument in your function, will take precedence. So the second argument, if I pass this one as a second argument, then the new object will have 2023 as a value for the year. If I take this one as a second argument of my function, then the year in the result will be 2022. Okay, now let's write our function and to make more sense then. Now let's declare function. Let's call merging objects, and to have two arguments, so object 1 and object 2, and it will return us a new object and it's merging of both. So the way we can merge two keys is just destruct the first one and also the second one and put them together. Okay, so the way you do that, 3 dot object 1. Okay, so I'm just destructuring the first object, and then I will do the same for the second one. So I'm merging out the both, and this one, the good thing about it, by default, if there is any extra or not extra, if there is any same key or same property in both, the second one will override the first one. It will the value of it will override the value of the first one. Okay, let's remove this. Here it's wrong, and then let's print this on our console and we see how that works. Let's call our function and let's pass this one first, and let's pass this one as a second. So I'm expecting to have as a result an object which have maker, model, the year, again accidental, and the year it will be replacing this one with this value. So I'm expecting to see 2023, and also I want to see the color, which is aqua. Now let's test if this is working. Go back, and you can see here the values, all of them are there, and there we go. My year is the second object year. If I go and switch the orders, if I do this one is here second argument, then in the year I will see 2020. Save, go to my browser, and you see here 2020. Easy. Now let me just okay, the next one is asking us to write a function that will take one argument, which is your object, and will return as a new object with the keys sorted in alphabetical order. Okay, so how we can do that? When you see here the keys sorted, which means you have to take our object and get the keys, okay, sort them first, only the keys first, by their alphabetical order, and then we'll create a new object by mapping through the new array of the keys in order and assign them their values, and then return that object. And let's say what that means. So first let's declare our function. Okay, it's accepting object as an argument, but I need to give the name of my function, sort by keys. Okay, then it will open the curly bracket. Now we have first to get the keys and sort them. So let's declare a variable to hold for us the new array of sorted keys. So sorted keys, and again, if you remember how we get our keys, we use JavaScript built-in object with capital O dot keys. Okay, and that will give us array of the keys within my object. Okay, and then JavaScript had built-in function to do the sorting, so dot sort. Okay, so that will sort for us the keys in order, and that will be stored in this new variable. Good. So here get keys and sort them. Now what we'll do, we'll create a new object, empty one. We will store our new object in the alphabetical order of the keys. So const my new object, sorted object, and we will declare an empty object as for now. Okay, now we have to create a loop, so we can loop through these keys and add them to this object by order. So for const key name, okay, of sorted keys. So this is the key name in each index we are going to loop through in our array of keys names. Okay, and what I will do, whenever we find a key in this array, I will add it to this object and assign it its value. Okay, so I'm going to say sorted object. Oops, what did I name my object? Okay, sorted object. Okay, the key name. Okay, then that will be equal to the value of this key in this original object. And if you remember how we access that, object bracket and the key name. Okay, now, oh, this is wrong, it should be capital N. Now we'll just return our new object, sorted object. Let's copy this so I don't do again any spelling mistake, and let's test this if it's working. Let's console log it in our browser. Console log, sort by keys. Let's pass our object we created here, and let's see if this is working. Okay, here it's saying we can't read property of undefined. Okay, and let's see what we did wrong. So, here it shouldn't be bracket, apologies. So here it should be, it's a function, so it should be like this. Now let's go back to our browser, and there we go. So you can see it is by order. So here both are M, but A usually come before O, right? So maker is first, model, then year. And I think already I put them in order, so let's switch them off and make sure that this is working. And even let's put this one in the middle. Let's mess it up. Now let's go back to my browser, and it's still working. So maker first, model, then the year.